It's like a review, a short and simple kind of understanding of the halachot of Pesach. I mean, we'll start it tonight. Mitzvah Hashem will continue. I know that there's a lot of halachot, and so trying to compress it, make it more simple, or at least not as complex. Of course, there's a lot of halachot, so we'll have to just jump right in. So, this coming week, we're actually going to start the month of Nisan. And so when we say Misha Nichnas Adar Marbim Besimcha, someone who enters Adar, it increases joy. Rashi over there says because of Purim and Pesach. So the obligation to increase in joy doesn't end with Nisan Adar. It continues into Nisan. So it's still applicable. So don't think you can start getting sad for no reason. During the month of Nisan, there's no tachanun. That means there's no confessions of sins. That means both on any day of the week, right after the Amidah, we usually do confessions of sins. Sometimes people who do the nighttime Shema on the Mitah, they have confessions of sin. Some who do Tikkun Chatzot, they also do confessions of sins. And so during the month of Nisan, none of that. And if someone does Tikkun Chatzot, they only do Tikkun Le'ah. This is because the first 12 days we commemorate the inauguration of the Mishkan in the desert, when the 12 tribes came and the 12 Nesi'im would bring presents, bring their offerings. And so the first 12 days we remember that. The 13th was a day of Isru Chag for them. And it was the day that Aharon came and lit his candles, the menorah. And then the 14th, of course, is Erev Pesach. And then you have Pesach, the whole 10 till the 21st, 22nd. So then you have that whole time. Rav Ovadia says that also there's a midrash that brings down that the third Beit HaMikdash will be built in Nisan. And we have to have an inauguration for that as well. But since the first 21 days are filled with events, so we can't fit it in there, so we'll have to push it off until the last week of the month. And at that point, since in the future we're going to have a celebration, therefore even nowadays we do not do any confessions of sins. It's a full month of joy, just as Adar was. With that being said, the first 12 days we also have a custom to read the parsha of the Nesi'im, the parsha of the tribes, the chieftains that came and that brought their offerings. And so each day we read one of the offerings. It's a custom. So on the first day you would read Yehuda's, Nachshon ben Aminadav's offering. And each day, as it progresses, you can find it probably in the back of the Sidurim, the back of the prayer books, or you can find it in Parshat Naso. And so that's just a custom. There's no obligation to do that. There is a custom amongst the Ashkenazim that they do not say Mizmor Letodah during Pesach, because Mizmor Letodah is a Thanksgiving psalm, and it's kind of parallels to the Thanksgiving offering that was given in the temple. And the Thanksgiving offering in the temple was made out of both bread and matzot. And so you can't bring bread on Pesach. So the Rama Yisrael, he rules that on Pesach you would not say Mizmor Letodah, but the Sephardim, they do. We recite it the whole month. We say it's a means of praising Hashem, not necessarily corresponding to that offering, and therefore there is no problem with saying it. So on the also a halacha, not necessarily on the first day of Nisan, but it should be done as quick as possible, is the blessing over the blossoming fruit trees. This is Birkat HaIlanot, that the blessing is that may you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, be blessed, who has left nothing missing in his world, and who has created good creatures and good trees for people to benefit from them. And this is a yearly blessing that one can say upon seeing the blossoming fruit trees. Now it has to be specifically a fruit tree. You have to see the blossoms. Okay, Ideally, you would want 2 fruit trees if you can have. If not, 1 blossoming fruit tree is fine. This is an obligation both on men and women, so it's not just a blessing of praise, and so there is no. It's not necessarily a time constrained mitzvah. It's a blessing of praise. The Arizal says the best way to do it is go outside, outside the city, find an orchard, and bless over there. If you can't, then it's best to just find any blossoming fruit trees. Ideally, men would want to do it with a minyan of 10 people, but of course, there's no obligation. In fact, it's better to do it early and without a minyan than to do it with a minyan and later, because the Yetzer Hara always pushes you off. He says to do it later with a minyan, and then the whole Nisan will pass by in a second. The obligation is on any fruit trees, as long as you know that they are fruits. Even like a lemon tree is fine, even though we don't really eat lemons. But we want to make sure that they're not grafted trees. So grafted trees would be considered something repulsive, since it wasn't made in nature that way. It was created by man, and so we would not say so on a grafted tree. The blessing, it should be recited in Nisan if you live in the northern hemisphere, right? Because if you live in the southern hemisphere, then I don't think there's going to be any blossoming fruit trees at this year, at this time of year, and so you would say it in the location where you would see blossoming fruit trees. And let's say some years that you wouldn't see it in Nisan, so you would go ahead and you would say it in Iyar, which is the next month over.
Mm-hmm. How close do you need to be to the tree?
So you just need to see the tree, see the blossoms.
Line of sight?
Yeah, as long as you see the blossoms, you're good to go.
Okay.
You don't have to, I guess, hug the tree, right? Tree huggers, but you don't have to hug the tree. But you want to be at least close enough where you can see the blossoms. And so if you're taking binoculars, there might be a little bit too far as well. Okay. And the blessing is specifically for people that can see the trees, right? A blind person would then therefore not be obligated in this mitzvah. And so as long as you see a blossoming tree, you're good to go. You can go ahead and say the blessing. I think we'll send it out. I saw that they had English and Hebrew, so you can say it in English, no issue. So I'll send that out. And so go ahead, recite that as relatively close as possible to the beginning of the month. So the month begins on Thursday. So Thursday is a Rosh Chodesh. So if you can, go out on Thursday and say it. If not, no big deal. But try going ahead and blessing on it. I already saw some blossoming trees, so I know that at least here in Dallas we're good to go. The heading right into the month of Nisan, we get to the Shabbat before Pesach. It's called Shabbat HaGadol. Now, why is it called Shabbat HaGadol? We talked a little bit about this on Shabbat, but the idea is that the Jews were commanded to take the lamb, the Paschal lamb, on the 10th of Nisan, which that year was a Shabbat, and in fact this year as well it's going to be a Shabbat. So this year the 10th of Nisan, which was the original Shabbat HaGadol, is also the date of this Shabbat HaGadol. And so the Jews were related by Moshe, by God, to go ahead and take the Paschal lamb and tie it to your bed. And so they would go ahead, tied it to their bed, and they would have them inspected and tied for 4 days until the 14th of Nisan. At that point, they would go ahead and shech them, slaughter them in preparation for the Pesach offering. They would have barbecues that day, and that night on the 15th, they would eat it right before Makat Bechorot, right before the plague of the firstborns. At that point, Paro said, "Get out of here. You can leave." So, what happened on this day that made it such a great day? So, when the Jews went ahead and took the lambs and tied them to the bed, this was a big jab at the Egyptians. Why? Because the Egyptians worshipped the lambs. That's what their god was. The Egyptians worshipped anything that was a firstborn, and in their eyes, in the constellation, the way that the year works, the constellation that was the first is Aries, which is the sheep. I guess the symbol is the sheep, and so they believed in that being their firstborn, the greatest power, and therefore they worshipped the sheep specifically. And so when they saw that their gods were being taken, they were very offended. The Midrash brings down that the firstborns came to the Jews and asked them, what are you doing here? And they say specifically the firstborns. Why? Because the firstborns were the Egyptian priests. If the Egyptians believed everything that was firstborn was holy, then the firstborns were also holy, and so they were the priests. So they came to to the Jews. They said, "Hey, well, what's happening here? What are you doing with all of these lambs, our gods, right?" And lahavdil, you go to and you tie a cow in India, right? They would stone you probably. It's the holy cow, right? And so over there was the holy sheep. And so they saw these Israelites taking the sheep, and they said, "Well, what are you doing with our gods? We're going to kill you." And they said, "Listen, our God told us that in about 4 or 5 days, 4 days and a half, the night of the 15th, when there's a full moon, when your God is supposed to be the strongest, the constellation is supposed to be the strongest in the middle of the month when the moon is full. Well, our God's going to come and he's going to kill all the firstborns, all of the firstborns. So all you priests, you better pack your bags, get out of town because Hashem's coming to town." And so these firstborns, well, they knew Hashem so far was batting 9 for 9. All right, he was even the best Hall of Famer doesn't bat perfect 1,000. He sometimes he misses. Hashem 9 for 9 hasn't missed yet. Every plague that Moshe said he was going to bring was brought, and so suddenly they're telling him, "Listen, the firstborns are the next to go." Well, the firstborns didn't take that well. And so what did they do? They went to their fathers. They said, let these Jews go already. We don't want to die. We're happy here in Egypt. We don't need these Jews anymore." Comes the fathers, and they said, "No, we can't." Paro said, Paro was also a firstborn, right? And Paro was very, very stubborn in that regard. But everyone said no. The firstborns did not like that. And then there was a huge civil war. And it says that there were 600,000 Egyptians that perished that day, that died that day, because the firstborns wanted the Jews to leave. The father said no, and so then there was a clash between the sons and the fathers, between the Egyptians, and the Midrash brings down 600,000, corresponding to the 600,000 that left Egypt. There were 600,000 Egyptians that died that day, that 10th of Nisan. Now, after all of this commotion, they came to their senses and they said, "Hey, wait a second, who is the problem here? The Jews, all right? Let's go kill them." So they all turned on the Jews, and as they were marching towards to kill the Jews, Hashem afflicted them with intense intestinal pains to the point where they could not move, and they collapsed, and that was the end of that raid, that riot. And we remember this day as a day of praise to Hashem, even though necessarily there's no halacha corresponding to the day. Generally, the rabbi of the shul goes ahead and he gives a special drasha. He gives a special speech relating all of the halachot, all of the laws that go along with Pesach. And that's what is alluded in the pasuk, the verse in Tehillim. If you look at Tehillim in the Psalms, chapter 136, verse 10, it says over there, "To he who smote the Egyptians with their firstborns." It doesn't say to their firstborns. It says with their firstborns, meaning that they had a civil war amongst each other. And so for this reason, the Chida says that you should go ahead and instead of saying Shabbat Shalom to your friend, say Shabbat Hagadol Shalom, because it's Shabbat Hagadol. So that's just a nice nice commemoration, but there is no obligation to do that. If you said Shabbat Shalom, don't worry, you're fine. But that's a nice minhag that he brings down. Now, as we come closer to Pesach, we start actually 24 hours before the Seder, right? hopefully by then your houses are clean of chametz. I really hope that you don't have too much chametz in the house. If you do, you have a long night ahead of you. But 24 hours before Pesach, before the Seder, we do something called Bedikat Chametz. So this is going to happen on the 14th of Nisan, which this year is going to be I think the 31st, if I'm not mistaken, of March. If there's a 31st of March, right? Mm-hmm. There is, yeah. 31st of March. And so the 31st of March at night, we're going to do Bedikat Chametz. The 1st of April is Erev Pesach. And that's a Wednesday. So Tuesday night, the 31st, you're going to do Bedikat Chametz. You're going to search for the Chametz. How is this done? So everyone in their houses has to, of course, you want to make sure that the houses are clean, but right on that night, right after Tzet HaKochavim, right after dusk, you want to go ahead, and the head of the household, or whoever's going to be doing the search, should take a candle, and then he should bless al Bi'ur Chametz, on the destruction of the Chametz. He says, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al Bi'ur Chametz, on the destruction of the Chametz. Even though we're doing Bedikat Chametz, we're looking for the Chametz, nonetheless, we're already going to be blessing on the Bi'ur, on the destruction, because this is the beginning process. The end process is the actual destruction. So at dusk, you want to go ahead, take that candle, and start looking around the house. The ideal way to do it is with a candle. A candle meaning one wick with wax on it, right? It shouldn't have multiple wicks. Like usually on Havdalah, we use something with multiple wicks. That's called a torch. That is not allowed, because we're going to say that the Gemara says that it doesn't make light, good light. It kind of makes shadows, so you might miss things. Also, someone might be worried of burning their house down with a torch. So a candle is the ideal way to do it. If someone does not have a candle, then they can use a flashlight, phone flashlight, a pocket flashlight. That also works, and that should be done really close to dusk. You shouldn't be sitting down to eat a meal. You're not allowed to sit down and eat a meal. Meal meaning 52 grams of bread or cake. If you need coffee, you need water, fruits and vegetables, rice, all of that would be good. But again, you don't want to sit down to eat a meal until you have done the search. The search you should check all of the house. You want to make sure you check your whole house, all of the nooks and crannies, all of the places that you have not already sectioned off for chametz. If you have any places sectioned off for chametz, that's fine, right? Some people have a special a pantry or a shelf that they're going to be selling. That's going to be their chametz drawer. That's going to be their chametz pantry. That's fine. You don't have to check that. But the rest of the house, you want to make sure that you check. You want to make sure, especially if you have little kids, they're going to be taking the bread a lot of different places. So you want to make sure that you're checking. If you come back later in the night, check it, right? Go ahead and check. You shouldn't. If you have any classes, Torah classes, try to get those pushed off. If not, and you believe that it's going to hinder you, and if the person's speaking just simple halachot, you can go. But the ideal way would be to go ahead and do the search immediately. If someone came later in the night and they didn't pray Arvit yet, then he should first pray Arvit. If someone can remind him afterwards to go do the search, if it's not if no one's there to remind him and he might forget, go ahead, do the search first, and then pray Arvit. People are usually more cognizant of praying Arvit than they are of doing the search, since that's a once every year thing. Someone comes back late and they're very tired, then they can nap as long as someone is there to wake them up. If no one's there to wake them up, do the search immediately. Don't wake. Once you say the blessing on the search, you do not want to speak. All right, you don't want to. It's just like any other blessing. If you take a apple, right, and you say Borei Priya Etz on it, you shouldn't speak until you actually eat it. Similarly, here you should not speak until you start the search. If you did speak, don't worry. You do not have to repeat the blessing again, but you should go ahead and start the search. There's a minhag. It's not a requirement, but there's a custom to do shechianu, put a special new fruit on the table. So after you started searching a little bit, you look at the fruit, you say shechianu, and then you continue the search. And when you're done with the search, go ahead and take that fruit or whatever, say Borei Priya Es, and then eat it. You don't have to again say Shechianu. It just it's a nice thing to do, since we don't say Shechianu on the search, but we still want to commemorate thanking Hashem for getting there, for bringing us to this day.
For the search, for not talking when you start the search, is that only until you find the first piece?
So it's only until you start searching. So you don't have to. You're not allowed to talk until you start searching, but you really shouldn't talk the whole search if it has the whole search, the whole house. Yeah, unless it deals with the search itself. So if someone needs the light went out, the candle went out, and they need another match. Oh, can you bring me another match, or can you bring me a bag so I can put all this? That's fine, but don't start saying, "Hey, did you hear what Trump said?" No, that has nothing to do with the search, and so we consider that as idle chatter. And once you're during a mitzvah, you should not go ahead and do any of that idle chatter. Zone in on the mitzvah. Afterwards, you can go ahead and talk, but from the beginning of the blessing until you finish, you shouldn't talk. The worst time to talk would be from the start of the actual blessing to when you actually start. That would be the worst time to speak. Afterwards, it's less worse to speak, but still you should try not to speak unless it has something to do with the search itself. Now, the search itself can be done by multiple people. It doesn't have to be done by one person. Usually the head of the household is the one to go ahead and do it. But it can be if it's a big house, right? It's a search and destroy mission. So go ahead, tell all your kids, all your family, right, to go ahead and help you check all of the rooms. Especially if someone has a bigger house, it might be very difficult. Nonetheless, they don't have to say a blessing. The head of the household, he's the one to say the blessing, and they all follow him. There's a custom nowadays brought down by the Arizal that you take 10 pieces of hametz, of bread. You want to make sure that they're less than kazait, meaning they're less than they're less than 18 grams, or around 18 grams, right? You don't want to take anything too significant, because if you don't find it, then you will at least be able to nullify it when you nullify it later on that night. So there's a custom to go ahead and place those 10 pieces around the house, and then find them. And they say it's a proper custom to follow. Now, even though this is the custom, right? It's not the ikar. It's not the point of the night. The point of the night is to find any hametz that you can find throughout the house. Just the custom is also, when you're searching, put those 10 pieces around the house, and have that in mind. But it should be that the main point of the night is to search and see if you find any hametz, any other bread, any other leavening in the house. Not necessarily those 10 pieces. Again, the 10 pieces, nowadays what people do is they take the 10 pieces as the ikar, as the primary, and then, the second part is finding the chametz. No, it's the opposite. The whole point is to find any chametz, and then we add along that custom of the Arizal to go ahead and add those 10 pieces. So go ahead, you can add those 10 pieces, but remember, at the end of the day, you should still be searching all those nooks and crannies. Don't just check and find those 10 pieces. After 10 pieces, you say, okay, I'm done, and you only searched half the house. The other half of the house needs searching. If someone fails to find one of those pieces of the 10 pieces that you went ahead and found, don't fret. I mean, you should try going and searching as much as you can. But if you really cannot, you don't remember, and especially if you have your little kids and they decided they wanted to move it around, don't worry. As long as it's less than kazait, it's less than 18 grams, really 27 grams, right? But you should make them less than 18. As long as they're less than 18 grams, then they're nullified with the bitul. So after the search, so actually before that, when we're searching, right, we're not only searching our houses. You should search any place where there could possibly have been chametz. So that means a porch. That means a stairwell. I guess if someone has a stairwell in their house, also a car, right? If someone has a car, they have to also make sure that in the car that there is no chametz. So someone has to go ahead and do a bedikat, do a search in their car itself. And so you want to make sure, of course, that the car should be cleaned beforehand, but you should also go ahead and search the cars. Clothing you do not necessarily have to search for, because we wash our clothes, and so it's probably there's not going to be too much chametz. If there is any chametz in there, it's probably really small or completely destroyed by that time. You don't have to go ahead and close the lights when you're doing the search, even though we're using a candle or a flashlight. You don't have to go close the lights. You can leave the lights on, just go ahead and inspecting. Sephardis have a custom not to go ahead and inspect the books that they read. Sometimes, they read and the crumbs get inside. So Sephardis have a custom not to. There are more stringent opinions out there saying that you should go ahead. The Chazon Ish, for example, he ruled that one should inspect all of the books for crumbs. But Rav Ovadia Yosef, he said it's not necessary. And so therefore, especially since what's going to fall in there's not going to be a piece of kazite, it's probably going to be a little crumbs, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to nullify, so the nullification goes on that. So after the search itself, we do a nullification. There's a text of the nullification that we recite that right afterwards, and that text is basically saying that any leavened food or leavening in my possession that I have not seen and not destroyed is hereby considered null and like the dust on the ground. You should repeat that 3 times. It should be in the siddur, it should be in the machzor maybe. And the idea is that our sages really only implemented the destruction of hametz, and the Torah really instituted the destruction of the hametz, that you shouldn't come to see or eat hametz. That's the biblical the law. Now the sages they made this a 2-step process. One is to go ahead and search and destroy, find all the hametz and burn it or destroy it in another manner. But also we are going to go ahead and we're going to nullify all of the hametz that we aren't selling, any of the hametz that is going to be still quote unquote in our possession. And the purpose for that is that if someone missed anything while searching, well, it's considered ownerless at that point. It's considered like dust, and so it's not relevant. It's not significant to the person himself. And so we go ahead and we make sure that we do that as well. Now, on the opposite side, if we just had the nullification, well, then it could be that someone isn't nullifying it with a whole heart. And he's saying, yeah, I'm nullifying it. And then if someone tries to come and take it, he says, no, it's mine. So you didn't nullify it. If you nullified it, then it wouldn't be yours. So we make sure to also destroy all of the chametz in one's possession. Now, the morning of, after that night, if someone forgot and they didn't do the search that night, then they still have to do it that day. The day of the 14th, April 1st. If you forgot to do it the night before, you have to go ahead and do it the day of with a blessing. Okay? So you have to do it with a blessing. In fact, if someone didn't do a bedikah, once Pesach started, he's still obligated to do a bedikah even as during the Chol HaMoed. And even if he forgot the whole Pesach, let's say he went on a Pesach trip and he forgot to do it, then he has to go afterwards and do the Bedikat. Of course, after Pesach starts, you do it without a blessing. So no blessing in that regard. So I guess the timeline, really, I started too late. Really, from Purim, if you leave your house anytime from Purim to Pesach, right, and you're going on any Pesach programs, any Pesach trips, then you already have to do Bedikat Chametz, and the Bedikat Chametz has to be without a blessing. Okay? Except if you're going to be leaving on the 14th at night, right? At the 14th, March 31st, if you March 31st at night, you have to do Bedikat with a blessing. If someone leaves and then they get an Airbnb, right? So then you have to do Bedikat in your house, and then you would also have to do another Bedikat on the Airbnb. The Airbnb, when you do it on the 14th, you would have to do it with a blessing. So it's I guess more work in that regards. But that's the idea. And if someone has forgotten, they forgot, they came back after their Pesach trip, and they came back to their house and they said, oh, we forgot to do the Bedikat, you have to do a Bedikat at that point. You have to do a Bedikat, you have to go search your house for Chametz, because the restriction against eating Chametz is even after Shabbat, even after Pesach. So if someone didn't sell their Chametz, and they had a piece of Chametz, and they ate it after Pesach came out, they're liable in karet, they are liable in the punishment of karet, and cut off, yeah. And that's because it's called hametz she'avar alav Pesach. It's hametz that Pesach passed over it. Passover passed over the bread, which means that if it was not sold or it was not nullified, it was Jewish owned. At that point, anyone who eats it, any Jew that eats it, would be liable in karet.
If you have multiple residences, but you only live in one, do you have to physically be in that residence to nullify it?
So you do not have to physically be in the presence to nullify it. You can nullify it, I guess, remotely, right?
Okay.
There's no problem with that. One should go ahead and if they have two residencies, when you're selling the hametz, sell all the hametz in that house.
Sell twice?
You should when you're selling or whoever you're giving it to, you should list both addresses
Okay.
as your residencies, so they know that those are the places of hametz. We'll talk more about that when we get to the sale of the hametz. Now, the morning of, we're still allowed to eat hametz. So the April 1st, it's not April Fool's joke, but you can still eat hametz on that day, and so you would be able to eat hametz until really the Torah warns us against midday, but the sages, they were a little bit more strict, and so they said starting from the 5th hour. So I think over here we said that that's around in Dallas, it's around 11 a.m. So starting from the 4th hour, the 4th seasonal hour, halachic hour, we are forbidden to eat chametz. So over here in Dallas, that's 11 a.m. 11 a.m. forbidden to eat hametz at that point. And then you have another hour to do the destruction of the hametz. You can't benefit from hametz after 1 hour before, one halachic hour before midday. So that's around 12:15 here in Dallas. You have until 12:15 to go ahead and burn all the hametz, do all of the koshering, and feed your dogs or whatever, all of the hametz. At that point, you cannot benefit anymore from hametz. At 1:31, which is chasod, at that point, everything is forbidden. You're as if, for all intents and purposes, Pesach started. Of course, you can still do electricity, you can still do work, but we're saying with regards to chametz, at that point, the whole restriction. That's at midday, halachic midday. Over here in Dallas, that will be around 1:31. So you want to make sure, before that, after you eat your breakfast, you want to go make sure that you brush your teeth, floss your teeth, make sure that there's no chametz in your mouths, and then you're good to go. In the morning also, we have the Bi'ur Chametz, we have the destruction of the Chametz, which means that we have to go ahead and any Chametz that we had left over from the pizza that we ate the night before, or any of the Chametz that we found, those 10 pieces that someone hid around the house, all of those should be placed in a bag, and they should be brought to your local, probably synagogue, where they're going to have a big bonfire, and we're going to burn all of those chametz. If you don't have a big bonfire and you don't feel comfortable burning chametz, you can always either throw it into a lake, break it into crumbs, throw it into a lake, into a sea. If that's also unavailable, you can flush it down the toilet. And if that's not available also, for some reason, you can throw it into a garbage can, but make sure to pour chemicals and cleaning agents on it, so it becomes inedible at that time. In all of those cases, we just want to make sure that no one's going to come to eat it. At that point, then we're good to go. The obligation on the Bi'ur Chametz and also the Bedikat Chametz is both on a man and a woman. So if even though usually the head of the household is the man, if a woman's living alone, then she has to go ahead do the Bedikah. She has to go ahead do the Bi'ur, the searching, and she also has to do the destruction, and she should also say the text of the nullification of the chametz. Now in the morning also, we also say another time the nullification of the chametz, because at that point, between night and day, you probably ate some chametz. And so we should go ahead and say it again. At that point, we're again saying it 3 times, and you want to make sure that you only say the bitul, only say the nullification after the last piece has been burnt. So you want to make sure you throw them into the fire or flush them down the toilet, right? Whatever it may be. You don't want to say the nullification in the toilet, in the bathroom. You want to make sure you get out of the bathroom. At that point, though, you can go ahead and say the nullification. You want to make sure, though, that the last piece has been burnt. Okay, I think we got all of that. If someone goes to a hotel, right? Hotel, same thing as the Airbnb, right? If someone's in a hotel, they would have to do the Bedikat Chametz. And on the night over, on the 14th at night, if that's where they're going to be staying, they should recite the blessing over that Bedikah. If someone is planning, I guess usually the Pesach program, it's, let's say, starts on Pesach itself. They only check in on April 1st, so they fly in, let's say, to Florida, and then on the 31st they have to sleep in a hotel. And so the 31st they go ahead and sleep in a hotel, which we said that's the 14th. That's when it's supposed to be the Bedikah. So there's a leniency to say that you don't have to do a Bedikah that night, because you're not going to be staying there. You're only staying there for that night, and then you're moving into your Airbnb, other hotel room that day. At that point, whenever you can get to that hotel room, you should do a Bedikat. If it's still before the time of Bi'ur Chametz, before 12:15 here in Dallas, then you should go ahead and say it with a blessing. After that time, though, you should do a Bedikat, of course, but though without a blessing. And so just have that in the back of your mind. Yeah.
If I'm in a hotel and in the pantry, refrigerator, they sell cupcakes on.
You want to make sure that those are all out. You want to talk to or you lock it up. Either way, you want to make sure that there's no chametz in your room, because especially if you have little kids, right? Yeah. They're going to open it up and they might come to eat it. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you can ask them. They're usually very accommodating with that. Ask any the hotel manager if you can take out any of the chametz, any of these 11 breads.
Which would be beer also.
Beer also, correct. 11 beer is also chametz, and so all of these items should be taken out. Really, all of it, if you can get them to take all of it, all foods. Yeah, take all the foods out. At that point, you're good to go. You should, or if you can lock it, but I don't know. Usually, it's harder to lock it up. Best thing to do is, though, to ask the manager to take out all of that chametz from your hotel room. You should be careful with little children after you do the Bedikat Chametz, that they don't run around with chametz in the house. At that point, you would have to do another Bedikat if they go ahead and they take chametz and then they come out without chametz. You give them a sandwich and they come back without a sandwich, and there's no way they ate that fast. Well, go ahead and you have to research the house. With regards to, we'll talk more about it, but with regards to mixtures of chametz, right? As long as it's not edible by a dog, then you are good to go. Meaning, as long as before the time of the nullification, before 12:15 on April 1st, they are inedible, then you're allowed to keep them over Pesach. Now, you might be looking at me and saying, why would I ever want to keep a moldy or inedible bread over inedible chametz over Pesach? Well, a lot of our day-to-day things, for example, ink, dentured alcohol for fuel, shoe polish, they might be made out of starch, they may be made out of chametz. So we're saying that these, since they're so inedible, they're not, you're not able to eat them. Dogs aren't even allowed to be able to eat them. Then you are good to go. There's no problem with having them over Pesach. Book binding, right? The paste that is used to bind books, that's also sometimes made out of chametz. Also cigarettes, sometimes the paper, those might be made out of chametz-based material. Nonetheless, since they're inedible and they're not even recognizable, you are good to go and you can keep them over Pesach. Therefore, if someone smokes, they're allowed to smoke on Pesach. I don't think there's any kosher for Pesach cigarettes. If there is, you can go ahead and invent them and sell it in New York, and you'll make a lot of money. The destruction of the chametz should be done, like we mentioned, before the 5th hour. So before, over here in Dallas, before 12:15, you want to make sure that you destroy and nullify the chametz before that time. And then for all intents and purposes, you're in the Pesach zone. If someone found chametz anytime during Pesach, if it was the holiday itself, well, the chametz is actually muktzeh. You wouldn't be able to move it. You wouldn't be able to touch it. So you would have to take a bowl and flip it over on the chametz so that no one touches it, no one looks at it, and you would have to wait until after Pesach. At that point, you go ahead, take that bread, and you burn it. If it's during Chol HaMoed, then there's no issue of touching it. Go ahead and burn it. both for the first and second day of here out in outside of Israel, when it's both the first and the second day are holidays, the same rule applies. Therefore, if you find it on the first or second day, you should go ahead and cover it. If you go ahead and you find chametz in the streets, don't pick it up, right? Even if you're trying to be a good Samaritan and you're just trying to go ahead and throw, like let's say a sandwich out into an actual garbage can, you should not go ahead and do that on Pesach, because the sages forbade someone from picking up even chametz, because he might come to eat the chametz. Since I know no one's going to really eat food off the floor, but we want to make sure that it doesn't even give the impression someone might see you with that sandwich in your hand and think, oh, he's I thought he was Jewish, right? Who's eating a sandwich on Pesach? And so therefore, the sages said, don't pick it up, even though might be the right thing to do right now on Pesach. We were stringent in that regard. So there is a big machloket between Ashkenazim and Sephardim with regards to a mixture of hametz that was done before Pesach. So Sephardis are a little bit more lenient in that if there is a mixture of 1 to 60 of grain of chametz inside a mixture of non-chametz, then it's nullified in the majority. And so, for example, if I think we brought the case of having you have your matzah ball soup and a grain of wheat fell into that matzah ball soup,
The whole soup is bad.
then no, we're not talking about on Shabbat. On Pesach. On Pesach, everyone agrees that that's bad.
Okay.
On Pesach, everyone agrees that your soup has gone bad. If one piece of chametz falls into that soup, you're done for. All right. Now we're saying that before Pesach, Sephardis are more lenient in that if let's say that wheat kernel fell in, you can scoop it out, and since the taste is nullified by 1 to 60, the rest of the soup would be good to go. You can go ahead and eat it. Ashkenazim are more stringent in that regard, as long as it's a solid. They are more lenient with regards to a beverage. So, for example, let's say instead of a wheat kernel falling into my soup, I had a beer, like a drop of beer fall into the soup. All right. So at that point, as long as there's 60 times the volume of that drop of matzah ball soup, then it's nullified, and you can go ahead and eat that on Pesach. Again, all of these halachot is before Pesach. It's before Pesach, and it's before the time that chametz is forbidden.
I see.
So it's before chametz is forbidden. At that point, it is nullified. With regards to the beer, liquid and liquid, even Ashkenazim permit that nullification. But if it was from the time of when chametz is forbidden, everyone would agree that is completely forbidden. Mm-hmm.
If I have a little can of matzah meal that's kosher for Passover, except it's expired, the date is last year's date.
As long as it's not open, then you're good. Usually matzah tastes like it expired, so so you don't. Yeah, the matzah seems like it's always expired. So as long as it's not opened, right, you're good to go. So that's not an issue. Sephardis are also more lenient in that if that mixture was not 60 to 1, it was 59 to 1, let's say, then you can go ahead and you can add more matzah ball soup to bring it to the 60 to 1. So, I don't think Ashkenazim are more stringent in that manner, but that's the main idea. So that's why it's a good thing generally to go ahead and make food before Pesach. Usually one does, right? But sometimes, with all the cleaning, someone forgets focused on the cleaning, they forget also that there's a cooking aspect. And so just keep that in mind. Now, all of these rules apply with nullification as long as that agent or that piece of chametz that fell in or that was added is not significant. If it's a coagulant, if it's something that's supposed to give a taste, if it's something like that, then even if there was 1,000 to 1, it would be forbidden because we don't give nullification to something that has significance. And so, if that piece of chametz was something that is of significant nature, then everyone would agree, even Sephardis would agree, that it is forbidden. So that's the general idea of these kind of mixtures. With regards to the actual the pots and the pans, well, I guess get more into that in a second. But the idea is that usually after 24 hours, we assume that any taste that has been absorbed into the pots is considered, it detracts from the food's quality. So if someone accidentally cooked food during Pesach in a pot that has been used all year long for chametz, but more than 24 hours has passed since the last time a chametz was used in that pot, even if, let's say, as long as there's no pieces of chametz in the pot, right? But it's been cleaned, it's a clean pot, and someone accidentally, they took out their chametz pot instead of using their matzah, their Pesach pot. So Rav Ovadia rules that one can go ahead and eat that. Of course, he cannot do it. He cannot do it specifically. He cannot do it with that in mind. But if he does it after the fact, he can go ahead and eat it. The Ashkenazim, though, forbid it, and so it's only a Sephardi heter. It's only a leniency for the Sephardis. Ashkenazim hold that the forbidding of food, they forbid the food even if the absorbed flavor of chametz was detracts from its quality. So even if it was more than 24 hours, you put soap in the thing. Nope. If it's a chametz pot, you're gonna have to go throw that soup out, even if it was an accident. Cosmetics, even though cosmetics sometimes have ingredients that include chametz, and nonetheless, since like we mentioned earlier, it's inedible, so there's no requirement to go ahead and getting kosher for Passover cosmetics. Similarly, pain pills, as long as there's no taste, right? As long as it's being swallowed, any tablets or capsules, as long as they are needed for pain relief, then they can go. I think nowadays there's a couple lists out there that show you what's the best for that. Now that's as long as it's not life-threatening, right? If someone has a life-threatening illness or they have a condition where they need these pills, then you don't have to go ahead and look for kosher for Passover pills. You don't have to check any list. You can go ahead, take whatever pills that your doctor has told you, because at that point it's pikuach nefesh. You're saving your life. And so if someone has any medications that they need to take, even if they might have chametz ingredients, go ahead and continue taking that medicine. It's unless there's an alternative, but usually these medicines don't have an alternative, and so one should go ahead and take those medicines, especially since one's swallowing them. They're not getting any pleasure from them, and usually it's not even registered as chametz. It's not edible by a dog as well, and so a lot of different leniencies in that manner. Dishwashing soap, right, and all soaps, right, like shampoos, conditioners, they do not need a kosher for Passover symbol, even though technically the cleaning agent dishwasher is probably the most close to coming with contact with the food. Nonetheless, since it's inedible, right, then it doesn't need a special certification. If you want to go ahead and buy those with a special certification for Pesach, I guess it's a greater thing, right? It's advisable to go ahead and do that, and you will definitely be blessed by heaven. We want to make sure that we do not keep any Pesach chametz over Pesach. So that means that you should not go ahead and specifically keep anything that you're not selling to the non-Jew. Now, the idea of selling, right? The idea is actually it's a minhag, it's a custom, and it's brought down already from generations prior, dating back all the way to the Gemara days. that they would sell the chametz. So anyone who thinks it's just a loophole, they should second guess themselves, because it's been for generations this custom. And the idea is that we give to the rabbi or the an organization that is knowledgeable on how to go ahead and do this. It's not a simple sale, but they should go ahead and give over, make the rabbi their agent. They're going to be the agent, or the agency, or the rabbi. They're going to be their agent in order to sell the chametz on their behalf. Now, of course the rabbi knows what he's doing, so go ahead and give it to him. But you yourself, you want to make sure that you're storing all of the chametz relatively in one place, in one pantry, whatever it may be, with regards to where you're keeping your chametz. With regards to vitamins, there are lists out there that they've made, I think, with those recommended or not recommended vitamins. So go ahead and check those lists. Especially if there's any active chametz ingredients. If there's no active chametz ingredients, more than likely you're good to go. But if there are any active chametz ingredients, you should make sure check with your local Orthodox rabbi, make sure that those vitamins are good to go. Normally, we're less lenient with regards to vitamins, especially since they're less life-threatening, right? And so you should make sure that any of those lists out there, if your vitamin is not on that, then go ahead and ask specifically on those vitamins if they are allowed to be taken on Pesach. So when you're storing the chametz, make sure you're storing it in one single location. Make sure that it's not dispersed around the house. And wherever you're keeping it, if it's like a room, make sure you lock the door. If it's a pantry, make sure you lock the pantry. If it's a cupboard, a drawer, make sure you put a sticker or lock the drawer saying chametz, so that no one will go ahead and accidentally open it. Just to keep in mind that once you sell it, right, it's technically not yours. So from the moment that the rabbi or the agency tells you that they sold it, until they tell you that they bought it back, you cannot eat from it. Even after Pesach, even though Pesach might be over, you can't go ahead and eat from that chametz until you get the notification from the rabbi, from the agency, that they bought back the chametz. And if, for example, the non-Jew that bought it would walk into your house and say, "Hey, can I take that chametz?" you have to give it to them, because for all intents and purposes, that's their chametz. And so we have to remember that when we're selling it. Now, another key point on our side is that you want to make sure you're selling the chametz and you're not selling the house, because implied with regards to selling the house is also the kitchen utensils, right? And if someone who sells or gives their kitchen utensils to a non-Jew, when they get it back, then they have to go ahead and re-immerse all of those vessels into a mikvah. Mm-hmm. And so that might be very, very time consuming. Right. So make sure you're just listing where it is. Usually the rabbi is good with that, but you want to make sure to say that I'm selling all the chametz in my house, for example, and not necessarily my house, all right? And so go ahead, make sure that you're specifying that in whatever contract, whatever list that the rabbi is making or the agency is making, that you're selling all of the chametz in your house at this address. That's usually how they do it. If they ask, give a specific location, it's in this cupboard, it's in this room, and you're good to go. You yourself do not want to go ahead and sell the chametz to a non-Jew, even though you might have non-Jewish friends. You want to make sure that you're appointing the agency or the rabbi. Again, there's a lot of different halachas that go into selling these chametz. It's not just a simple sale, and so we want to make sure that we're leaving it to the professionals. Just like I wouldn't go to my neighbor to get a root canal, right? I wouldn't go. I would go to a dentist, right? So too over here with the selling of the chametz, I'm making sure to go to a professional, going to a rabbi. You should generally sell to the same time zone, right? So don't, if you're in Dallas, don't sell to, I guess, California or New York. And if you're in New York, don't sell to California. If someone does, though, they would be dependent on that location. And so they would, again, have to wait until the wherever that location they buy the chametz back in order to get your chametz back. Usually if you want to, you can give the rabbi a list of all of the chametz, but that's not necessary. That's going to be the general, just a general location of where it is in your house. That would be enough. Okay, so we'll put it off there for today. B'ezrat Hashem, next week we'll talk about the purging of utensils, and so we'll pick it up there. Are there any